promise you this book will be finished and the world will love it and people will see it and it will be done in the way you want it done. And we have never flagged on that promise.
A loving tribute from a parent to the last project of her dying son, a delightful children's book written by a young man who had only begun to live. 10 minutes after the hour, and we have a story for you now that speaks volumes about the power of one family's love. Our medical editor, Dr. Tim Johnson, profiles a young writer whose life ended far too soon and how the book that was his dream lives on, thanks to a promise that his family made.
Whenever I feel like crying, I smile hard instead. I turn my sadness upside down and stand it on its head.
Barbara Saltzman never gets tired of hearing that verse from the children's book, The Jester Has Lost His Jingle. For her, those words capture the essence of the fable and its author and illustrator, her son David.
Everything that he wrote and drew was imbued with that spirit of making people feel good about themselves and letting them know they had the power to turn their lives right side up and to turn their sadness upside down.
According to all who knew him, David Saltzman was a very special human being. He was smart and talented, funny and passionate.
David Charles Laertes Saltzman, graduating cum laude.
An honor student in high school in California, David quickly made his mark when he went to Yale.
Every college is shaped in some way by the student leadership. And David was certainly one of those people who set the tone for the college just in the way he participated, in the way his peers liked him and related to him. So he was one of the energizers for us.
At Yale, David double majored in English and art. And during the summer before his senior year, he began work on a children's book about a jester who awakens to find that the world has lost its sense of humor. So he sets off to find it.
The jester in many ways is David. He drew him to look like him. He has the same infectious spirit and determination. And by getting the book to people, in my view, it's a way of getting David's spirit to people, that they get to know him through the book.
However, when David returned here to Yale for his senior year, he received some terrible news. When he went to the doctor to check out a persistent cough, he found out that he had advanced Hodgkin's disease. All of a sudden, his book project became a matter of great personal urgency.
For the senior, best exemplifying the qualities of courage and strength of character and high moral purpose, David Charles Saltzman.
David underwent chemotherapy and radiation, and the cancer was in remission when he graduated with honors in 1989. But it soon came back, and David returned home to California. That October, he wrote in his journal, "If the worst does happen to me, I want that book finished and in the hands of those who love me."
He was a little concerned that he might not finish it. And we said, David, you work on it, and we promise you this book will be finished and the world will love it and people will see it and it will be done in the way you want it done.
David died the following spring, just before his 23rd birthday. But his family was determined that his book would live. After being told by publishers that the book was too expensive to produce, they took out a second mortgage and decided to publish it themselves, even traveling to Hong Kong to supervise the printing.
David's death was the most horrible thing that ever happened to me. It was extremely painful for me, and my way of dealing with it was to run away, just not think about it, not deal with it. Barbara, however, was so concerned about getting the book published, so I reluctantly went along with it. And I think the turning point in my life was when Maurice Sendak read the book and loved the book and wrote one of the most moving afterwords I've ever read.
Maurice Sendak, the esteemed children's book author and artist, wrote, "It's difficult to remember all the bright, promising youngsters. It is easy to remember David. David's jester soars with life." The Saltzmans recently returned to Yale, the setting which inspired David and where he is still very much remembered. And David quickly comes alive to the children who love his book, like 8-year-old Maureen Daly.
Well, he just sits by your sides and tries to make you feel better by making you laugh.
That's good.
It actually works.
It does work. Did it help you yesterday?
And soon everybody started giggling.
everybody started yuckling.
And nothing reflects David's belief in the healing power of laughter like the faces of the children being treated for cancer at the Yale Children's Hospital.
He died too early, but he had a wonderful 22 years, and the book, I think, carries on what he believed in, and when I see it helping people, I can't tell you how wonderful it makes me feel.
This is an absolutely wonderful book. We've enjoyed reading it, and it's particularly poignant because he fell into that very, very, very small minority of people who really don't beat Hodgkin's disease. His tumor was quite large when he was diagnosed.
His mom is the editor of the entertainment editor of the Los Angeles Times. His dad's a professor of journalism at USC. His brother Michael, that you saw, is the executive producer of Murphy Brown. So they have access, I guess, to the publishing business, but they had to put a second mortgage on their house, borrow $50,000 from friends to get that book published. And his dad says it'll be a success if they don't lose their house, but a very worthwhile tribute to their son.
The Jester Who Lost His Jingle. Great book. Pick it up.
We'll be right back.
5 minutes after Good Morning America introduced The Jester Has Lost His Jingle and David to the Country, our phone didn't stop ringing. Within 2 hours, we sold the 20,000 books we had on hand. Another 10,000 had already been donated to hospitals nationwide. The book reached the New York Times bestseller list. We went back on press immediately. We now have 445,000 copies in circulation, including bilingual editions in Spanish and Japanese. Response to the story came from healthcare professionals, educators, students, families, and teachers, everyone who worked with children. They all wanted copies. And educators began sending me lesson ideas and activities they were creating for their students. To extend the reach of the book, we formed the Jester and Pharley Phund charity. The book took shape in David's mind in the summer of 1988 between his junior and senior years at Yale. He was in a summer school program, and one day when he walked into class smiling, he told a silly joke, and nobody laughed. No one said hello. No one even acknowledged his existence. He took out his notebook and a pen and began to doodle. He drew a sad-looking face that reflected how he now felt. He randomly put triangles on its head, took another look, and wrote the words, "The Jester has lost his jingle." He was thinking, of course, of himself as the Jester. After class, he went back to his room and couldn't get that sad little Jester out of his mind. He began thinking, I bet there's a good children's story I could create about a Jester who loses his jingle. And then and there, the Jester was born. He created a storyboard and laid the whole story out. When he returned to Yale in the fall, he received permission for the book to be his senior project in both art and English. Not long afterward, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, but nothing stopped him. David worked on the story constantly, along with cartooning for 2 competing student newspapers, being a tour guide, and helping students with posters that they needed for projects. He also was always there for someone whose spirits needed picking up. Our family promised him that whatever might happen, we would be sure that his book would be published as he envisioned and would be given free to all children diagnosed with cancer annually. Today, that number is 16,000. When David was a freshman at Yale, he met Where the Wild Things Are author-artist Maurice Sendak at a master's tea. Mr. Sendak was so impressed by David that he invited him to visit his studio in his home in Litchfield, Connecticut. It didn't take David and a friend long to jump on the train from New Haven. After spending a life-changing day seeing the author's studio and how he worked, David called me at the LA Times to tell me he had decided what he wanted to do with his life. He wanted to be a children's author-artist, just like Maurice Sendak. 5 years after David died, we were ready to take the book on press. It was nearly 10 years since David had met Mr. Sendak. Yet, despite his reputation as being a curmudgeon, he graciously responded to my request, asking him if he would say a few words about the story. He remembered everything about David and told me how saddened he was by David's death. He said he'd write a few words and would do anything he could to help. Put his name on the cover if we liked. Maurice Sendak's endorsement made everyone in the literary world take notice. Attention should be paid to David's story. Before one book went on a bookshelf, 10,000 were donated to young cancer patients across the country. We took the Jester's admonition to Pharley as our motto. It's up to us to make a difference. It's up to us to care. I left the LA Times. My journey was now one of visiting hospitals, schools, and other centers where children needed to have David's Jester lift their spirits, as at this hospital in Maine. Everywhere, in every state, hospitalized children of every age, background, ethnicity, religion, and socioeconomic status fell in love with the Jester and Pharley. The universality of David's story spoke to every single one, including their parents and other adults. The book is requested now more than ever as COVID-19 protocols mean that most hospitalized children can't have visits from siblings or friends, and only one parent at a time for limited times. As one of these children told us, I'm never alone when the Jester and Pharley are with me. One day in 1999, I received a letter from teachers at Elmhurst Elementary School in Rhode Island. It contained a check for $139.80. The students so loved David's story that they wanted to give copies of it to young patients at their local hospital, Hasbro Children's Hospital in Providence. They created a week-long readathon in which they requested that they be paid a penny a page for every page they read. They read 13,980 pages. I realized that with the Jester and Pharley Phund, a readathon could be an effective means of boosting literacy and compassion with The Jester Has Lost His Jingle. We have found that students, especially elementary students, felt as strongly about helping kids in their community as Elmhurst students had. They read page after page after page to give copies of the Jester book and doll to children in hospitals, clinics, and special needs facilities helping children. As you can see, some schools have read over 500,000 pages in 3 weeks to show their compassion. This posting from 2 adorable National Institutes of Health patients in Maryland speaks poignantly about the Jester's ability to help children smile no matter what is going on in their lives. I really liked the book. It reminded me that I can find laughter anywhere and that I can come out of my troubles if I just try. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciated the message in the book. Sorry for your loss. Love, Sabrina. Over 52 million pages have been read by nearly 175,000 students to help children like Sabrina since our literacy and outreach programs began in 2000. They have grown far beyond anything I could have imagined when our family first mortgaged our house to publish David's book. Over 214,000 Jester books and dolls have been donated to more than 350 hospitals across the country. We are now in a fundraising campaign to put the 3rd printing of our bilingual English-Spanish edition of The Jester, El Bufón ha perdido su gracia on press. 40,000 copies of this edition alone have been helping Spanish-speaking children and families since 2012. I'm not surprised that David's legacy continues to live on. I believed it would when he first showed us the rough draft in the summer of 1988, before any of us knew of his illness. We look forward to seeing how many more children and families we can help with David's story, especially during this unprecedented time. We look forward to future partnerships where we can join hands to make a big difference in your community with the Jester and Pharley. Thank you.